Awesome. Well, it looks like we've got people from all over. Thanks so much for coming. Today we've got two expert teachers with us. We've got Roberta uh, and we've got Justin, and both of them have taught AP Chemistry and will be sharing their thoughts with you today. So as we go, I'll just show you our plan for today. First, we have some panel questions they'll be answering. Um, Anytime you can post a question in the chat or you can unmute and shout out a question. And it's going to be more of a conversation than like a lecture, so feel free to jump in anytime. After the panel questions, then we'll open it up for any other audience questions. And then right at the end, if you want to, you can stick around for a positive chemistry tour, totally optional. And we've got an activation code for to start out the year with a free month if you want to give it a go. But this webinar is not about positive chemistry, it's about AP chemistry from these expert teachers. So we hope everyone can get something from it, even if you don't use positive chemistry. So we'll go ahead and get started. Um, First question for our panel is how do you handle pacing to make sure you cover all topics and have time for review? So I'll start with Roberta.
When I found out I was going to be teaching AP chemistry a few years back, I took a couple workshops, and one of them, the presenter gave the advice that you have 90 some topics to cover. You do not have time to slow down. If they're not getting it, you don't have time to reteach in class. You need to put it on the students to come in and get that help. He said, suggested laying out your calendar in advance and stick to it. And that's what I've done. I've tweaked it from year to year when I found out what worked and what didn't. Combined topics when I found out that some things took less time than others, and I could switch things together, provide more time on the difficult topics, but I do not slow down. It's a little overwhelming at first for some time for some of those students in the beginning, but they get into the flow and they understand what's happening, and then they just get into the routines.
Awesome. And how much time do you leave for review at the end, Roberta?
We usually test the first week, our final unit test, the first week of April. And that leaves me 3 to 4 weeks to review and do our final exam. And we usually we get through all of the major difficult topics in that time.
Awesome. And what about you, Justin?
Yeah, I want to just echo what Roberta said. The number one thing you can do for this is to sit down with the calendar and calendar out the actual like the units and the topics and everything. If you don't do that, then you're just sort of like hoping that you get through everything, and things can always take longer than they, and it's you could spend 2 or 3 years teaching all this stuff. Like you really have to, like she said, keep the pace up. So my recommendation is to sit down with a calendar, calendar it all out, um, and then second, as you're calendaring it out, a good rule of thumb if you're new to teaching AP chemistry would be to follow the course and exam description percentages.
Mm.
So each unit has like, hey, this unit is 10 to 12% of the test or whatever, and use that as a rough estimate of like, hey, 10% of 12, 10 to 12% of the test, this needs to cover 10 to 12% of my classroom days. It won't like the actual time it takes won't necessarily fall exactly on that, but it's a pretty good rule of thumb as far as if you don't already kind of know how long each unit takes to kind of follow that. And then like Roberta was saying, you got to keep the pace up. One thing that I do like to do is every quarter when I'm doing my calendar to leave in like a day or two that's just like a buffer day. So that if something does take a little bit too long, I mean, if it's every lesson's taking too long, you got to come up with something different. But if it's like you've got one thing here or there that takes too long, you have like a day that you can expand into, um, and to try to add that buffer day into your calendar, I think is helpful. And then one more thing that I thought about with this is because you're moving so fast, and just because of how like learning works, like we don't learn well when we learn one thing and then like never go back to it. So just for our students to have some sort of system to where you can always go back to the previous concepts. So maybe they didn't do great on it the first time, but maybe you're bringing that in and you're like your warm-ups or do nows, whatever you call them in the beginning of class, or in homeworks or different things, some way to like bring those concepts back. whether or not they got them the first time, just to keep those fresh and to help them remember those. So those are my, but it's fast paced, and it's definitely a wake up call for a lot of students of just how, of how challenging it is. But
Those buffer days you mentioned, I don't have them in my calendar, but I can adjust it if needed. However, those buffer days usually end up being my snow days up in Wisconsin. That's where my
right.
snow days fall is that's where, okay, take that day out. We don't have it
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, my students were gone. We're on block schedule, so I just see them basically like 2.5 times per week, and I just missed a whole block because of the senior retreat, and I was like, ah, completely forgot about this. But yeah, that stuff. Those are good for those two.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so our next question is a typical unit in your class. What does it look like? And how do you fit in fundamentals labs and AP style practice into a typical unit? Roberta, we'll go with you again first.
Um, so when we first start a unit, when they take their previous unit test, they pick up all of their lessons, all of their notes, all of their practice problems and everything right after that test. And then we start in the very next day with content. So my unit's going to be covering topics daily, multiple topics each day usually, because I am also on an alternating day block. And then after getting through the topics, there might be labs stuck in there, honestly, because of the AB block and the limited amount of time I have. I usually don't even get into lab until unit 3, but there'll be labs put in where they fit with the content. And sometimes it'll be at the end because it takes all of that unit content and wraps it together. There will always be a review day that's where we're doing a bunch of the practice FRQs and MCQs are throughout. But I put in the practice FRQs, then we go through the idea of here's a question, how would you answer it? Would your language have gotten the point? And we'll go through it at that point. We do a bunch of practice multiple choice on that day. And then they have time to work on the progress checks from AP Classroom as well on that review day. And then we have the test. The multiple choice and so forth coming in on my quizzes throughout the unit, and with my extra practice with the assignments they get throughout the entire unit that they're supposed to work on rather than the daily practice. They have a lot of chance to do some AP style questions on those as well.
Nice. All right, it's my turn. Jump in.
Yes, go ahead, Justin.
Um, yeah, yeah. For labs, yeah, I think the AP has like a rule of like a certain percentage of your class time has to be for labs, and I know there's some people that follow that out of a conviction, but I think it's got to be to get through all of the content and in a way that they like can do the questions. I definitely don't spend nearly that much time. My rule of thumb is like one lab per unit, so I really try to stick to that. Um, I could definitely use that extra time for other things, but I do feel like a chemistry class, like you got to do some labs and stuff. There's definitely a lot more labs that I would love to do that I don't, just because of that. One thing that I've done a couple years, and I've got small classes, so this is kind of a thing that I can do with with more of a small class in one section of AP chemistry. But I would have like about once per quarter, I would do a homework. I called it a homework lab, but basically they had to come in after school to do a lab once per quarter and had like a couple options for them to do. So it was a way to kind of like outsource some class time, but also I didn't want to take up too much of their time, but they could usually find a way to come in and do that after school. Of course, and I was staying after school, so not something I recommend for everybody. Another thing that I thought was like a practical kind of helpful thing I did was there's several released exams, and I would take one released exam and make that sort of a bank of questions that because a lot of the multiple choice questions we're just limited to the number that we have access to, and so a lot of those multiple choice questions I would want to save as for like my actual tests and stuff. But I would take one released AP exam and just be like that whole exam is for practice in class. So whenever we get to a particular topic on a unit, I'd be like, hey, here's what an example question like that looks like, and then we do that question together from that one particular exam. And then I'd use the other released exams to build my own tests and stuff. I'm actually AP Classroom. I don't use AP Classroom as much as maybe I should, but there's just some clunky things about it. And I also really like just building my own exams and controlling what questions are on there. So I do a lot of like screenshots um, of questions. um, and that sort of thing, and build my own exams that way. Um, okay, the question though, that what does a typical unit look like in your class? I mean, I've got a test at the end. I try to do a lot of like short quizzes. I'm a big fan of just this idea of frequent low stakes quizzes. There's a lot of just like cognitive science research around like that lots of short low stakes quizzes are like really good for our memory. And so I try to do that with my block class. Ideally, I would do like one of those every beginning of every class, and it's just going to be like a few questions. It's not going to be, a ton of time. But I think that can be, yeah, 3 to 4 quizzes, 10 minutes in a unit. Yeah, like something like that. The times where I've been the least successful is when like they have had no assessment at all until the unit test, and then it's like I've just waited too long at that point. So like little short quizzes and things are really helpful. The average, like, and so I said one lab per unit, the test at the end, lots of little quizzes throughout. I tend to do like flipped classroom a lot. I found with my AP students works decently. So now if you do flipped classroom, and they watch a video for homework, they take notes on it, you can't expect them to like know that content super well, just like they don't know the content super well after we've lectured on it. So but I still like to do flipped classroom like that, and then have them start by doing um, like a review on whiteboards. So I send them to some whiteboards, and then have them just try to like recall all of the stuff that they can remember from the video. Just do some like active recall kind of stuff. And then we go over that together, and then as quickly as possible get to actual practice. I know as a teacher, the easiest thing to do is to like lecture for way too long, and then you just, okay, I spent 40 minutes lecturing on this topic, but then I had 10 minutes of practice. And at that point, I prioritized the wrong thing. It would be better for me to just like be real quick with my lecture, and then get them into some practice, because that's where they're really going to be like thinking through things and working through things. And that's advice to myself too, because I struggle with that, just like a lot of us do. But yeah, get to practice problems quickly as possible.
Awesome. Thank you, Justin. I'll just pause for a second there. Does anyone have any questions right now? If you do, feel free to shout them out.
Ask us some questions. It's it's helpful to know. Also, I don't know, like, is it mostly like new teachers in here or experienced teachers? That kind of information might be helpful for some of the advice and stuff too.
That's a great question. If anyone wants to post in the chat if they're new or experienced, that would be great. Okay, we'll move on to our third question. What are 3 resources you use most regularly? It doesn't have to be exactly 3, but just some ideas of your kind of go-to resources that you use. Justin, let's start with you this time.
Yeah. Awesome. There's some people, I'm just looking in the chat here. I'm like, Keisha, 26 years of teaching, 10 years. I feel like some of y'all should be on the panel, maybe, with some of the experience that y'all have. So if you've got other things, as we're sharing, if you've got other thoughts and stuff, feel free to post those in the chat too. And we can learn from you guys too. Um, yeah, I'd say the top 3 resources. Number one is join some Facebook groups. So there's an AP Chemistry Teachers Facebook group, just huge, just people posting stuff on there. There's also, I haven't been on there in a while, so I'm not sure if it's as active as things have changed, but like Twitter, now X, used to like be very active in people posting really good just chemistry teaching content. So go find all the people on there, like and follow them. Um, but yeah, the AP Chemistry Teachers Facebook group though is a really good resource. I've just found a lot of stuff from the different subjects I've taught from there. Second is AP Classroom. I just said I don't use AP Classroom that much, but I do use it to find questions and pull questions and different things. So AP Classroom's a big one, and then Positive Chemistry is I'm not just plugging that because I'm on a call for this, but Positive Chemistry. I also teach physics, so Positive Physics I use as well, and it's just a really, what it does is really, Abby's redesign of Positive Chemistry is incredibly aligned to AP Chemistry. It really is. Like it gets into like pretty much all of the same content. It gets at a pretty deep level. It's not necessarily going to ask it in the exact ways that the AP Chemistry test does, just because those questions are written by teachers all over the country from different, like the way that they write those. But it's a really good way. a really good thing to use. I use it more for like homework than I do for in-class practice. It can be used either way. But I like it for homework because they get feedback right away. I can see how they did. I can see their like they get a calculation score and a completion score. So their calculation score I can use to be like, oh, okay, they got it eventually, but they really struggled through it. Maybe we need to spend more time on it in class. And then the completion score is what I used to just like give a completion grade on it. So it makes grading homework pretty easy just using that. And but yeah, and it breaks the skills down. So yeah, so and I don't use the testing feature on there. That's probably something I underutilize on there. But but yeah, it's just really good for giving them practice and getting really aligned stuff. It's like a backup almost for me. 'Cause I know there's gonna be some good stuff on there. So those are my big three: Facebook group, AP Classroom, Positive Chemistry.
Hey, Justin, can you use the positive chemistry like as a formative assessment? Maybe like not having like the video shown to kids, like, or does the video always come with the question?
There's always the video on like the first page of it, but I usually don't assign it as something new, so it's almost always like we've covered it in class, or I've got a YouTube channel where I've done a lot of stuff, so a lot of times it'll be like one of my own videos that they're watching, and then um, I just use it as practice. So I don't really I know a lot of some students will like go back and watch the videos when they get like stuck on a problem or if they need the extra help, so the videos are there, but I don't assign the positive physics or chemistry videos specifically.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can definitely use it as a formative assessment. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Does that
you
help?
can also change the number of questions. So if he's like if a topic has 10 questions and you want them just to use like 3 questions as a formative assessment, there's a button in the within the skill where you can like remove certain questions. So you can just like remove all the questions but the few that you want and then assign it if you wanted to use like a smaller formative assessment kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question, Keith?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Abby.
Awesome. Thank you. And thanks, Justin. What
Mhm.
about you, Roberta?
Oh, I echo the helpfulness of the Facebook group. I haven't gotten too many resources from there because I really have everything I'm using already, but the discussions are incredibly helpful. Finding out what the people who are reading that exam year after year, how they would score those questions and so forth. I was able to be a reader this year for the first time, which was very nice. Get really helpful being part of that group and hearing the discussions and seeing what got points and what didn't. Um, AP Classroom, I only use for the progress checks for the kids to use as formatives, find out where they are before the exam as review of the unit. And I pull my questions for my tests and quizzes from the question bank. I don't use it in unit. I just heard too many horror stories of it not working or dying or the internet going out or the AP Classroom going down. So I don't want to use it for anything that's critical like assessment, but some people do just fine with it. Um, I have a few things I use regularly in my class daily. One is a set of notes called I Do, We Do, You Do from Emily Miller, who shares her work freely in the Facebook group. That is probably the one thing I have gotten from the Facebook group that I use all the time. I don't build my lectures off of it, but it basically gives another way of presenting the same material for each topic for the students, and that's their daily practice. The you do problems are their daily homework. Then I also have built a custom course on positive chemistry that uses some of Jack and Abby's questions, but also now that they have the program your own questions in, I've taken a lot more AP style type questions and programmed them in for my kids. So I take what used to be unit long assignments they get on day one, they're due on the test day, and they're supposed to work on it the entire unit. And I put those in, and that's what I use positive chemistry for in my classroom is that homework that they're supposed to work on throughout the unit and use it as that and review whenever they have time. So it's not every single day they have to be in it, but by the end of the unit, they have to be done. And that is now a really big resource, taking it off of paper and putting it onto positive chemistry so that students aren't just copying the solutions off my answer key, but now have to come up with their own numbers and figure things out. I think that pretty much covers the biggest resources that I'm using on a daily basis.
Awesome. Thank you, Roberta. And we had one question in the chat about flipped classroom. Do you use more notes or vocabulary or problems? Like what sort of things are you using your flipped classroom for?
Yeah, just for notes. So I'll find a video, have them take notes on it. I sometimes I'll give them like, here's one problem to try. But I wouldn't do flipped classroom and then give them like multiple problems because there's a good chance that students just they're not to the point where they can watch a video and then like successfully do problems on it. Um, they need the feedback from the teacher and from their classmates and stuff to be successful on too many problems. So yeah, just for the notes.
Awesome, thank you. We had one other question as well. Have either of you used Pogles and find them useful?
I use a few throughout the year. I do provide them as a resource if students are struggling. I'll work through them with them. There are only a few that we do in class. I find the types of bonding one, as elementary as some of it might seem, to be super helpful in getting the kids to understand there's a continuum between the three major types of bonding. But we do occasionally pull the other ones out as I find them useful. The recent rewrite for AP Chem has some that are much more useful now than they were before.
I just put in the chat. There's two like Poggle-like activities that I created, and so there's on my website. So one's about Bohr models, and it's got some cards to go with it, and then one's about Maxwell Boltzmann. But yeah, I found that Poggles in general are just too long. They just take up too much time, and I like them. I like them in theory. I like this idea of like students exploring, and it takes them through the steps of the model and asking these like questions where they build their understanding. But I don't think it's worth the time trade-off. And I've had a lot of students that do them, and at the end of it, they've kind of missed the forest for the trees. Like they've answered the questions, but then I ask them like a big picture question about the topic, and they're like, "Well, what are you talking about?" And it's like, and then also I've not gone to a POGL training, so I might not be implementing them in the way that they're exactly meant to be. So I've just stayed. I've had some that I've used, but I've ended up cutting them ultimately.
Yeah, we'll only do about 20 to 30 minutes on a given POGL. I'm not going to do the whole thing. And that's only for the ones that I find really helpful.
Hmm.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Okay, last question. What tips do you have for new teachers, and what are common pitfalls to avoid?
I can start. Number one thing is work through a full-length exam yourself if you're a new teacher. Like just immerse yourself in the questions. Figure out what you don't know. Unless you were like a professional chemist before you started teaching it, there's probably stuff on there that's going to stump you the first time. And oh, it was for me. I had a minor in chemistry, and when I sat down, there's some of the stuff like I don't know what that is. So yeah, so I would say like do that, and then do some free response and grade your own free response. Just because like you just got to know the test well. You can teach the topics, but not know the test well, and then your students aren't going to be able to be successful on a test as well. So that would be a comment, a piece of advice for new teachers. I would also say, I would go back to the calendar thing, like calendar out your year, and then leave a few weeks for review at the end, and then try to build in things like more free response as you go. They don't have to be great at free response in units 1, 2, 3, but as they go, they need to be getting more and more comfortable with how to do the free response. So yeah.
On top of the doing your own exam, the first thing I was going to say was to make sure you do calendar. I literally have my entire calendar laid out for the entire year, right up to the AP exam, and I show it to the kids. I post it on Google Classroom. They know exactly what's coming up, and they know that the only reason it's going to change is for a snow day. If everything is going to be there, it's a live document that they can follow, just so they understand why I won't slow down, because we just there's no flex time available. And it's kind of counterintuitive because I don't like in my classes to teach to a test, but I kind of feel that's my job here for AP Chem. I'm teaching to a test. There's a test in May that we're trying to gear them to do well on. So I tell the kids, my first job is to teach them advanced chemistry. My second one is to prepare them for an exam that will hopefully get them some college credit and save them some money if that's where they're going. And so I do mention the exam right away as I'm teaching. I'm telling them, folks, this is the language that College Board wants you to use. I know that you are telling me this idea, but you're not using the language that's going to get you a point. And so I'm constantly bringing up the exam and how they should be expressing things on the exam as I'm teaching. I'm not saving it for the review days. I am doing it from the first week. I've already done it this week, and our students just started. So I think it's helpful to them. It gives them a sense of security. They're not wondering if what they're writing is the right thing.
Yeah. I feel that about the not teaching to a test thing. But I also think that like if the test is really good, then teaching to it like makes your teaching better. And I think the AP chemistry exam is a really good exam. There's things I love, things I like and things I don't like about it, but it is a high bar. It's a rigorous exam. It asks like some deep conceptual questions. I think it's a good exam. The only thing I would change about like I wish it had like a real lab component. Of course, that's not practical to like implement, but it would like force us to be like, oh, they really got to do the labs, you know? If I was thinking of like my ideal world of a chemistry
I used to
exam.
run our regional chemistry Olympiad, and I'd
Yeah.
have to help run the national version of the lab in our region. And they did have a lab component, and boy, students are great at the written test and they're terrible in the lab
Yeah.
because they just don't have that as part of the test.
Yeah. And I'd say too, like if you have time after the exam, depending on your like school schedule, save up all the labs that you want to do. Like the extra lab, like you should do some throughout the year, but like if there's other labs that you just don't have time for, save those up and then do those after the exam. I know some teachers will be like, the exam's over, we're just gonna kind of have fun days the rest of the year, which is fine. Everyone can do what they want. My recommendation is like they're still in class, like make it a real class and prepare them for college chemistry where they have to do labs and use that time after the exam to really push them in that area. Um, Robert said a question, what should we tell admin who question use of tech like Positive Chem? What I would say to that, how I would kind of justify it is say, hey, AP chemistry is very challenging. And what for Positive Chem specifically, I would say like what this does is it breaks it down into like individual skills and really helps our students where they are right now and building up to these like really advanced questions. Um, you know, I would kind of take that approach to that probably.
And it's also good to tell them that these students are getting immediate feedback and help from the program. The new AI tutor also helps, and they can get help from that without needing us in front of them. So when they're sitting at home or they're working on something on the bus to their basketball game or whatever, they can be working on stuff and still get help and immediate feedback as to whether they're doing it right or not.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, I'm just being devil's advocate here. So what do we do then? What's our role?
That AI is not going to teach them how to do it. It's going to help remind them of what to think about next. We are teaching them the initial skills. The positive chemistry is not going to teach them
Right, the mini
basic skills.
lesson, the actual lecture, et cetera, et cetera. My really what I'm saying is when the administrator walks in, they see the kids on the platform and they're like, well, what are you doing? You know,
I would say like so if they're working individually on there, then as the teacher, like circulating and then finding the students who are like aren't
yeah.
getting it and really need the help. So you're still active. Another thing you can do is like have them, they don't like the standard format that we think of is like I've got each student has one computer and they're doing the problems and they're like this like isolated silo. But you can very easily just be like, hey, you're going to be working in groups of three at a whiteboard and there's one computer per group and they've got it pulled up and they're like working the problems out before they answer it. Like you can use it just because it's like on the computer, you can still control the format with which they use it in class. Um, and also like your students, if the main thing that they're doing in class is like positive chemistry, then they're going to get bored with it. Like that's just not it, it's just like any tool. Like if you only use that one thing, then it's like, all right, oh, we're just doing positive chemistry again. Versus if you use it very strategically, then it's like, oh, this is a helpful tool and students are more engaged with it. So I would say like pick when to you can use it a lot, but you can still like vary up the format, and then also vary up your feedback. And also like students aren't going to always follow the AI tutor's feedback either. Like there's this relationship accountability in-person piece that's like very crucial for teachers. All the relationship building stuff is part of that too. Um, where like where AI is not to the point where we can just be like, hey, go learn from AI right now. Like ChatGPT or the AI, like they'll give us a lot of information. Um, but the value is in like how we strategically ask students questions or how they collaborate to work together or just different things like that.
In my classroom, they're not on positive chemistry too much. The positive chemistry for me is their at-home tool and their unit long practice when I can't be with them. When they're in the room, we're almost always doing something else. So it is an extremely useful tool for those who are trying to do stuff at home.
Yes, that's what I would like to see happening. You were asking what are some common pitfalls to avoid. The biggest pitfall, just listening to all these new AI techie tools, is not to rely on them. Personally, I don't use them ever in my assessment grades of students. It's an opportunity for students to have a resource that will give them direct and immediate feedback without me being there, as you just said, Roberta. But there are times when students, I was like, if you have a question about a techie tool, you need to communicate with me electronically what that question is. Like take a screenshot of it and show it to me because I don't even look at the questions. And that's what I thought this was going to be about, for us to have an opportunity to see what positive physics looks like, or positive. I teach both chemistry and physics. I assign the resources to my students, but I have never myself used positive physics. Like I don't go on. I have not tried the questions. I would like to be a student eyes right now to see what the student sees, because I'm still thinking, the kids love to be on the computer. I don't like to be on the computer. I like to be in the laboratory with the students. I hear you guys saying one lab per unit. For me, it's at least one lab a week. Like I go through withdrawal if I am not physically touching something, doing something, learning something from the lab. So I'm just curious to see what these students are seeing when they use positive physics in chem, because I assign it, I see their scores, I know they're doing it, but it's not mandated and not all my students are using it. I would like for all my students to use it because the ones who use it, I've seen a difference in their grades.
Mm. Well, when we're done with the panel, I'll give you a little tour for anyone who wants to stay around. I can show you what the students see on the website, so you can get a better idea of how it works. So we'll do that soon, probably. Do we have any other questions from anyone or questions in the chat? I guess we're in our last section now, audience questions. Did we miss anything? And then after that, we'll
You were asking the panel what resources they have used. I've used Khan Academy a lot, especially now that it's correlated to the SATs and the AP curriculum. I definitely use AP Classroom a lot because I want the students to be able to check themselves. In terms of the questions that I give to my students, we still use a textbook. Again, I'm an old school teacher. They need to use the textbook. I prefer the textbook questions to the College Board questions because they're actually chemistry questions. The College Board, I think, is like a little puzzle. Um, and I'm not a fan, especially after being an AP reader. I'm like, they give way too much wiggle room and too much leeway to students' answers, and it's not pure chemistry for me. Um, Chemistry Olympiad, I have all my students participate in Chemistry Olympiad because it's all about the way students think about questions. And that's one of the reasons why when students share with me the questions from positive physics, I'm like, wow, this is actually giving them wiggle room and ways to think through a question rather than saying, give me the final answer. I like that particularly. And any kind of simulation tools that the students can use, PhET simulations is a big push for me. And in this day and age, a lot of my students are not second-year chemistry students. This is their first time seeing chemistry as they're in an AP chemistry class. So I also use ck12.org, another resource for them to practice on their own and get immediate feedback. But I still use a textbook, Zoomdal, whatever edition it is up to now. I think it's 10th or 11th. I don't know. But that's the textbook I used when I was in college, and I still use it with my students in class. And they physically touch paper and open up the textbook and find the question, and we talk through it together and work through it together in the classroom.
Thank you so much for sharing. Do we have any other questions? Did I miss one in the chat, Roberta, about I saw you posting a message.
Rochelle earlier had asked about non-AP related, about how to get students who don't really want to be in the class invested.
Oh, okay, great. And did you guys have anything you wanted to share about that?
That's what I had put in there about just more labs and labs. You get more buy-in from students that aren't necessarily excited about the chemistry itself. You get more buy-in if you can teach it through a lab.
Nice, thank you. Okay, do we have any other questions for our panelists?
Could I just add, I just really quickly, I just want to put up, I know this is for positive chemistry, which I really love, but Pivot Interactives is amazing. There's so many great lessons, and they were all designed by teachers. So it's not just like oh, I've done labs during COVID and I used Pivot for that. It's really good now too. So and it's well maintained. And there's just so many like great things that have been it's like stuff you can't do, right? It's like it's they use sensors that you don't have at all, and they're like doing all kinds of really cool interaction with it. So check it out. I think it's like $5-ish a student. It's actually pretty inexpensive, and it's great resource. Just wanted to, and I don't work for them. I'm just wanted to add. It's another really cool thing.
Awesome, thank you. Anyone got anything they want to chip in or any other questions? And then we can do a little tour of positive chemistry for anyone who's interested. No, okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. And thank you, Roberta and Justin. We really appreciate all the wisdom you've shared. It's been super helpful. We'll switch over now and I'll give a tour of positive chemistry. So anyone who wants to leave, feel free to head out. Thank you so much for coming. If you want to stick around and get a tour of positive chemistry, feel free to stay and we'll get to that in a couple of minutes.
Thanks,
I'm
Abby.
gonna head out and help my wife with the kids' bedtime here in Memphis. So thank you all.
Thanks so much, Justin. Thanks, Roberta. Okay, awesome. So I'll just pull up positive chemistry now and I'll show you what the teacher sees and what the students see. So give me 1 second to do that. Oh, well, actually, I'll just show you this really quickly. If you don't use positive chemistry yet, we do have an activation code START25, which can get you your first month for you to try it out free with your students. We'll send this information in an email afterwards as well. We also have a pay what you can option. So if your school won't pay, you can choose how much it's worth to you, and that's what you'll pay. So let me pull up my Chrome now. I'll give you guys a little tour. Okay. Can you guys see my Chrome right now? Yes, okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so firstly, when you go to the website, you can either go to positive physics or positive chemistry or positive STEM. It's all the same website. And let me go to positive chemistry so I can show you how to log in. Chemistry. I don't normally use this URL. Okay, so once you get to the website and you get logged in, I'll show you how the dashboard works. So my login was Jack and demo for showing you guys how this works. Okay, so we'll head to the chemistry course, but we've got all these different courses here for you to choose from. And I'll just show you an example from our balancing equations unit. But you can see here we've got many units. It covers everything on the CED. So everything should be there for AP chemistry. For our balancing equations unit, I'll just show you an example question. So this one's here, really simple introductory question, just to show you how it works. So students will enter their answers, and here they literally just have to look at this image, count how many of each we have, and then determine is the equation balanced or not. So for this one, I would count, I've got 2 nitrogens in the reactants, and I can check that, and it goes green straight away if I get it right. So it's giving me that immediate feedback. Let's say I get it wrong initially. It's going to give me that little red X telling me you didn't get it right the first time. It pauses my checking so that I can't just check again and again and again. Now I can go ahead and I can try again. So my answer is going to be 4 for the hydrogens and the reactants. It goes that pale green to show you that you've gotten it right eventually. And up in the top right corner here, you can see we've got a accuracy score. That's telling me, did I get it right the first time? And we've got our completion score. That's telling me, did I get it right eventually? And as a couple of the panelists mentioned earlier, many teachers grade on their completion score in their grade book. And I find with my students, when I would grade on completion, it would really encourage them when they made a mistake to try again, keep trying, try and figure it out. And they have that immediate feedback, so they can go ahead and fix their mistake right away instead of kind of not fixing it and never knowing what went wrong. So that's the basic interface of how it works. And I'll just show you as well an example here of how we've kind of broken down something into the bite-sized pieces to help students get confident with the steps. So there they just had to analyze a visual equation. Then we have them analyzing a formula equation, and then we actually get into balancing whole equations. So I'll show you an example here. Now they're balancing the equation. They're still counting up how many they have in the reactants and products as a kind of check for themselves to make sure they're balancing it correctly. And then we go all the way down to challenge level materials. So in this unit, we've got these writing equations challenge. So for this one, we give them the word equation, and they have to actually select the formulae for each thing and then balance it. So that's an example of how we kind of take a more complicated topic and we split it up into the bite-sized pieces, so students can kind of get confident on the little bits before they get to the more complicated questions. So that's really basically what positive chemistry does. Jack, what else should I tell people about?
I so on make sure you mention that the randomization that you spent all that time doing.
Thank you. Yeah, so I forgot to mention all of our questions have randomization built in. So I'll show you this one again here. So anything in blue, like here we've got our formulae in blue, those are randomized. So different students looking at the same question on their 2 computers will have a different formula, or it might be like if it's a calculation question, they'll have different numbers. So I found that really helpful when I use this in my classroom, because students can work on the same question, but they can't share the answer because it's not going to be the same. They're going to have slightly different answers, but they can ask each other, how did you do that? And kind of guide each other through, which I found really helpful for my students. And it prevents them from just cheating and copying. Someone also mentioned the AI tutor earlier, which is down here. If you click on that, there's a little chat bot that students can ask questions if they're stuck. And we've made it so that AI tutor doesn't give away the answer, but it'll kind of give them the next step in the thinking. Like it'll see where the student got to so far and ask them kind of pointed questions to help guide them to what they should do next, rather than just telling them the answer. And you can turn that on or off in your teacher settings if you don't want to use it for some reason. Yeah, so we've got randomization, we've got instant feedback. The teacher can also go in and see all the student scores for a whole skill, you can go into an individual question and look at a student's scores for that as well if you want.
You mind going over the other mode? There's like an assessment mode where they can practice, and then if they mess up a problem, they can like fix it before they move on to the next one. Do you mind going over that real quick?
Yes, thank you. Great question. So I was just showing you work mode, and that's where your students might do most of their homework. There's also an extra practice mode. So on this mode, here from the teacher perspective, you can choose how many questions you want the student to do in a extra practice session. And when they use this one, it will pick 2 questions out of like the 8 that exist for that. It will give them to the student and they can answer them. And once the students answered them fully, if they want, they can restart and they can get fresh questions with new randomized variables. So if you have a student who's struggling with a particular skill, they can go in and get essentially infinite practice in this extra practice section. So most teachers grade the work as their homework. Then they'll have extra practice optional for students who need it. Then we also have the assessment mode. So for this one, you as the teacher get to choose how many questions of each type, again, students are getting on their assessment. And then when they access the assessment, we have a new feature where it's in full screen. So they'll click Start Full Screen Assessment. And you can see the bar at the top is black. And students can go ahead and answer the questions, same as before. But now if they get it wrong, it's going to actually lock them out from answering, from like trying again. On the assessment mode, they don't get to try again. They just get 1 try for each question. But when they're done, they can click Finalize, and then it will unlock those questions and allow them to make corrections. And you'll see at the top right, they'll get a score and also a correction score. So if you want to give a grade for corrections, you can. One thing I forgot to mention, I'll show you on a different assessment. With the full screen mode is that if the student exits out of full screen, it gives you this warning that tells you you've exited full screen, and it logs for the teacher when the student exits full screen and how many times. So that's to give you an idea if a student's cheating or not, if they're going to look at a different tab. So that's a new feature we have this year. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, so I have another one. So I use this mostly just for like extra practice at home, but when I go through the questions like in work mode and I cancel out certain questions that I don't want them to, in essence, do for practice, if I go and I put it under practice mode, when it pulls the number of questions, will it only pull from the questions that I didn't purple out or black out for them not to use, or is it still going to pull from everything? Because the only problem my kids had was like they didn't want to do too many problems, and I didn't want them to do too many problems. But my favorite mode ends up being the practice mode, because it allows them to make corrections along the way. And then if they get to the end and they want more practice, they can get more practice, as opposed to like in the work mode, what I find is all they're doing is plugging and chugging sometimes. And then in the assessment mode, they're not getting a chance to fix.
Mm. So to answer your first question, you can, yeah, when you, I'll just show it, people who don't know this yet. Say you are wanting to assign this skill to your students, but there's a question you don't like, you don't want them to see this question. You can go at the bottom and click Remove Problem, and then it'll come up and you can choose, I don't want students to ever see this problem. So it'll, once they're grayed out, that means students won't have to answer that question. And you can see there's for the extra practice, assessment, and work mode separately. So there you can choose like, I never want students to see this problem. Or you could say, I want them to do it on work, but I don't want them to see it on the assessment or the extra practice. So that's how you can kind of choose if students are seeing a specific problem in all the different modes. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that really helped because that's pretty much what I need to do. And pretty much in one particular section, I can do that. And then I can pull the number of questions I want, and it's only going to pull from what I didn't black out or whatever. And then
Right.
make the practice mode from there.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Thank
with that, is it still kind of random questions, just similar, or is it the exact same question?
So when it anything that's blue that's randomized, anytime a student like resets their extra practice, it'll have a new randomized value or formula or number or whatever. And it'll randomly, if it's choosing 2 out of 8 problems, it'll be a different 2 questions as well. So the extra practice is pretty randomized every time.
Okay.
And one other thing I'll mention is that depending on what level class you're teaching, you can choose to remove like a whole skill. Like if you have a lower level class and you don't want to get through to these questions, you can make them bonus or you can remove them by clicking here. And typically for an AP level class, you might be doing kind of going all the way down to the bottom to the more challenging ones. But for a lower level class, you could end up just using the first like half of the skills or picking whichever ones you want to do. And I know there's a lot of content on here because AP Chemistry covers a lot of content. So if you teach other classes as well, there might be whole units that you skip because you don't have time to do them and you want to focus more on other things. And that's fine. You can assign it that way.
And if you want to, if people haven't seen the practice mode, if you want to go through a problem with that with them, because that's pretty cool how they can get a problem wrong, but then have to either keep going or make corrections before they make them do other ones. So just kind of going like through a set of 2 of those would be, I think, helpful if people have never used that mode before.
In the extra practice mode.
Yeah, so they can kind of see what the kids see and all the reset. Because I know when I was doing it, a lot of the tools for the teacher are on the bottom,
Right.
restarting and stuff like that. So it's not always what people are used to.
Good question. Thank you. Yeah, so I'll just show an example here, with types of reaction. So there's 12 questions in total in the work mode. And in extra practice, let's say I want to choose 2 questions here. Then when the student goes and accesses the questions, they'll just have 2 questions there. And the student can go through and answer those questions. Oh, as you mentioned, there's these buttons for the teacher along the bottom. One of the buttons is show answers. So if the teacher only has that button, students don't have it. If you click on that, it'll show you the correct answers, which is kind of helpful if you want to just see the answers quickly. But I'll show you again if you say the student answers like this. And like you were saying, it locks them out of answering if they get it wrong the first time, same as on the assessment. And then they can, once they're done, they can click finalize down here. Now they can go ahead and make corrections. And then once they've answered all the questions, then where's our restart button?
So it usually pops up when they're done here on the
It's
bottom.
it's at the bottom.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Thanks, Jack. Yeah, at the bottom here, there's the restart button. So the student can then restart, get a whole new set of questions, and practice again. And these will be a different question. They'll have different formulae or different elements or whatever it may be for the given question.
And so a lot of times I use that and I say you got to get like a 90 or 100 or something like that so they can keep doing that. Okay, thank you. I got what I needed.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, Jack, did I miss anything?
Maybe we'll see if anybody else has questions. And then the other thing is if maybe run through really quickly how to set up your classes and how to create assignments, if people want help with that.
Okay, great. Do we have any other questions right now? No, okay. Awesome. So how to set up your classes. So you have a couple options here depending on if you have Google Classroom, Canvas, Schoology, or if you don't use any of those. So if you use one of these options, After you've made your account, you'll go and just click on that. Oh, no, first you'll click on it to get this Google Classroom integration directions because your school admin needs to approve like our website connecting with Google Classroom or whatever it may be. So you'll need to go and click on that link and send that to your IT people and get them to get you connected. But once you've done that, it's really easy to set up an assignment here. You can go and choose what you want to assign. You can choose how many points it's worth, when it's due. You can add all of that information here and click create assignments. So that'll give the assignment for the students. They can access it in Google Classroom or whatever it may be. They'll be able to see it there.
Can you click on the type again? I want to see the options. You said work full unit. Can you click on where it says type?
Oh, type here, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so you could do skills, extra practice. Okay.
Yeah, so here you
One
could
says
decide.
new, which is merging. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so basically the full unit, that allows you to just assign the whole thing. Or you can click individual assignments. So if you just want to assign one skill or a few skills, that'll put them in as separate assignments on Google Classroom. Whereas if you select merged assignment, say you want them to do like all three of these, but you just want it to be one assignment in Google Classroom, that's what that feature does. And then if you're using one of those platforms, when the students are done with their questions in a skill, it'll pop up, it'll say at the end, like send to Google Classroom or whatever, and they'll click on that and it'll send their scores over. And you don't need to do anything to like manually copy them over. The scores will all just go to whichever platform you're using. If you're not using one of those, you can have your students go to positivephysics.org and create an account. And I'll just show you when you make your account, let me make a new, I'll go to Positive STEM and show you what it looks like. When you create your account as a teacher, you will, after you've completed this page, you'll choose a classroom ID, and that's basically your personal code that lets your students like link up and join your class. And then when the students go to join, if you're making manual accounts, they'll click create account, click student, and then here they'll put in your personal classroom ID, and that will, so say mine is demo, that will connect the student to your classroom, and then they can sign up manually with their name, their email, a password, and choose which of your sections they're in. And then they'll have their account and it will show up in your account, that student and all their scores and all that kind of thing. So that would be a manual sign in there. Any other things, Jack?
Yeah, just real quick, make sure, yeah, before you have your students join, Abby, if you go back to the other tab, and if you go to teacher and settings and class periods, before you do kind of anything else, just make sure you've activated. If you teach more than one class period, you'll just want to activate more than one class period there, just so when your students are signing up, they'll pick which section that they're in because you'll want to be able to separate. That's how you separate your students. And then whether they're signing up manually or whether you're importing your rosters, you can get them all into separate sections. So just make sure you do that before your students join. If you forget anything that Abby was mentioning, we'll send out this video, but there's also that help/FAQs button in the upper right-hand corner, and that has all the directions and little videos for everything.
Okay, do we have any more questions?
Diane asked one in the chat. She said, is there a place where you can find your classroom ID? Yeah, if you're logging in with Google, you might forget what it is. If you, Abby, scroll down, this was on the settings page. You'll see, yeah, right there. It says change classroom ID and it'll pop up what yours was. Like ours was demo. So, you can, if you made it last year, you can change it or something like that.
As you said about making it last year, because you helped me, Jack, make my classes last year. And I did put in some um assignments for AP chemistry. Are
Mhm.
they still there or do I need to redo everything again this year?
Yeah, so like if everything we haven't cleared out anything, we haven't even cleared out your students. If you do want to clear out your students, Abby, if you go to teacher and manage rosters, um, there's a reset button where you can reset your stuff. And Abby, if you click on that reset, um, you can decide whether you want to clear out everything or whether you want to keep like the customization stuff that you've made before. So Keisha, you might want to keep that maintain problem counts and remove problems if you made any customization so that you keep that from one year to the next. Great. Yeah. Any other questions while we've still got you on?
Well, I just want to comment that I do like the merge feature, because especially in AP chemistry, there's a lot of, I felt like I was overloading the students too much with the entire unit, and I didn't want them doing the whole unit, and I really wanted to see immediate feedback on specific content we were talking about in class. So I will be changing how things were assigned, especially now with that new merge feature. So thank you for showing that.
Perfect. We're always trying to make it better. Yeah, and if anybody has any questions later, my email and Abby's email are all over the site. Especially if it's technical questions, send those to me so I can let Abby write new AP style physics and chemistry questions. And I'm always happy to help if you run into anything. Also, as Abby mentioned before, I'll send you that code to if for those of you who haven't used it, if you want to try it for free for a bit, you're more than welcome to. And if your school doesn't pay for it, we still want it to help you and your students. We built this out of our own classrooms. So we have a pay what you can option if your school doesn't cover the cost for you. So I'll show you all that information later. But yeah, thank you so much, Abby. Thanks so much for hosting this. And thanks everybody for coming, all the great questions. And yeah, thank you again.
Jack, the that full screen mode, did you make changes since yesterday? Because that's when it crashed and burned for me, and I spent like half a class period trying different ways, and nothing was working.
What kind of devices do your students use, by the way?
They have Dells.
Okay.
We're a Microsoft
All
school,
right.
so we do not use Google Classroom or anything.
Gotcha. Okay. Do you still use actually, I think we did. I lose track. I know I made some updates last night at like midnight Pacific, that we sent out there. I would suggest trying it like with one student when you're not actually doing an assessment. And then if you do run into anything, please do shoot me an email, tell me what happened, and that helps us find kind of in the logs we can see like what the issue was. But it's very possible that we may have fixed it since you tried it yesterday.
Yeah, I created a test student and logged in as that test student. At
Hmm.
least at about 7 o'clock last night on the East Coast, it wasn't working. I got the same screen stuff that they did, but you had sent out a thing that said that I guess there
Hmm.
were some issues with it. So I finally just like I said, but
Just
it wasn't the one where it automatically finalizes because that's not available to us. It
mhm.
just was the full screen mode and it wasn't working. But I don't know if that's a RIT people and essentially the way lockdown browser type stuff works from our end or if it's a more systematic thing.
Gotcha. If you ever can like shoot me like the username, the screenshot, like about what time it happened, and then we can look on our side and see what the error was. We've had a lot of people saying it's working really well for them. So, but if it's not working for you, we really want to make sure that we can fix it. So, if you do try it again, please either way, let me know how it goes. And then a screenshot is always even if it looks pretty blank, is always super helpful for us.
I can always I'm the one that sent you a recording of like
Yeah.
kind of what
Oh
was
yeah.
happening at one point, so I can do that too. Like I just record my what I'm doing and you can see it.
Oh, that would be amazing. Yeah, perfect. Please, anytime if you run into anything, yeah, please record it, send it to me. We can get it sorted for you.
All right, I'll try it again. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Thanks so much for coming. And again, feel free to email us anytime if you have any other questions that come up.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.